A quick video, pretty cool one actually. I got a bunch of stuff out for the next deal. Cinnamon's Harlequin, Surf Scoter, some pretty cool ones. All right, so I need to make a mold. I don't have any. I don't have any. I got to get some King Eiders going. So this is a large lobe. So all I did is it's frozen. Obviously, I went in and injected a little bit of water to, kind of fluff it back out because it's dry in the freezer. Couple screws in the back, still frozen. So bought some regular little cheap brushes. That's all you need. The 100% silicone. So I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna try to kind of beat the clock here. We'll go through, get into the nostril area first because that's where a lot of you want to have some detail in there. Then go through the side of the joint of the mouth so it kind of gets up into the teeth. So then I'll just kind of do a little thin layer. Silicone dries really quick, which is good and bad. I don't know. And so anyway, I try to get a little bit of a layer. So I'll probably do a thin layer, then might put it back in the freezer for a little bit just because I don't want the lobes to I especially don't want the lobes to shrink down or do anything like that. But main thing with silicone is you do have to really paint it in there. You can use a regular paintbrush, stain brush, whatever, but you do really need to kind of paint it, rub it real good. That way, get the air bubbles out, and then also just make sure the detail stays in there. Because if not, I mean, you'll just end up with a mold with a lot of. I mean, you can still do epoxy sculpt and fix any holes or, whatever, but I don't know why mess with it. So on these, like I'll end up doing the one with the pink molds I have, the RTV. It's more expensive and it's a little bit different of a process. I like to use silicone on stuff that I'm not gonna be doing a ton of molds on. So like King Eider, it's not gonna be like a redhead where I'm doing 100 of those a year as opposed to a dozen King Eiders like this year. So anyway, I just want to keep rubbing and rubbing because when you can put the water on there and as it's kind of starting to thaw out a little bit, it's gonna kind of pull away in some spots. I just want to make sure that everything's getting on there real nice, and then and then once you kind of have the detail set, or once you kind of have it on the bill real nice, then you can kind of start really globbing it on the rest of it, because you're going to be sanding all the bottom part down anyway to adjust for whatever, so it's not really going to matter as much. So keep that on the cardboard, go a little bit thicker, start getting in between the knob here. So it's kind of a cheap deal. I mean, you can make a mold. I got to do a big lobe and a small lobe because I've got several different types. So one tube should do 2 molds for you. So not bad. I mean, $5. RTV costs a lot more. I mean, it's going to get you obviously you're going to be able to mold quite a bit from it and get a lot of pulls and stuff, but like I said, it's a longer process. And if you're not, I learned this trick from a taxidermy buddy in Pennsylvania, because I always used to use RTV, and he goes, well, why don't you use silicone? Why go through all the trouble of RTV, the expense and the time, if you're only making something rare like some kind of hybrid? Because if I get a Scop redhead hybrid in and I got to make a mold, because I make a mold of every hybrid, I'm not going to do that if and need an RTV mold when I'm only going to make one probably in my freaking life. So, and like I said, the King, I got four to do in this batch, so that'll be this will be plenty good for a couple dozen probably. Like I said, I'll do a lobe. I actually have a big lobe, a smaller lobe, and then I'm gonna do an open mouth. There's a couple I'm going to do open mouth for the guys, just to kind of, they have multiple ones, just kind of give it some flair. So anyway, it's just making sure the bill, especially, man, is just making sure that is, and once you kind of get a coat on there, and even as it dries, you can kind of go over that area, and it'll actually kind of go into those spots and kind of fill it back up, which is kind of nice. And so I just make sure the bill, all that stuff is taken care of first, and then once I feel like that's at a decent level, then I can start working on the head. And like I said, I'll probably stick this back in the freezer. I just wanted to kind of show what you need. I mean, you could hold on to it, I guess, like hold on to the frozen part, but then it's going to be thawing out, and I don't know, I don't seem like. And you know, longer screws are best. You know, I think I have like 1 5/8" or something in there. I mean, you would be better off, I would say, if you did I don't know, maybe 2-inch, something like that. Just that way you can kind of get, I do 2 of them, because if you do 1, it'll hold it, but then it'll start to spin when you're starting to put pressure on it, and then if it's spinning around, it's not going to be doing you any good. So then from here, it's just kind of going around, getting a nice little coat on it, and then kind of smoothing it back out, just so you have a layer over all the open parts, because you can always make it thicker. I mean, heck, you can make it thicker with latex. If you don't want to use silicone on the whole thing, you can just use regular latex for the outer layer, which is fine too, and then you're good to go. So just make sure it's all in the areas, especially with detail. Like I said, just kind of get a little circular motion down here, just make sure it gets all on there. It's going to want to pull away in some spots because it's starting to thaw out. You know, that's fine too, but like I said, as you go in, it kind of fills up some of those open spots. And then the other thing I wanted to do is, I'm going to brush this down. I'm going to pause it. I'll brush this down, and then I'll show you another great trick to do so you can keep track of your heads on what is what, because this won't be confusing because it's a big freaking lobe, right? But otherwise you want to be able to keep an eye out. So I'll go get this, and I'll come right back, and I'll show you a cool little trick there. Alright, so then what I did is, I'll hold it. So I just made a little piece of paper, King Drake, L for large lobe. Obviously write in whatever you're going to understand. But, so the cool thing with this, and so now that it's kind of sticky, I shall stick it down here. So I just stick this paper on here, and since this stuff dries pretty clear, it's going to have a little bit of opaqueness to it, but so then I'll just cover that up, because if you try to mark it, I mean, markers are going to rub off, you know, Sharpies, or I mean whatever you use, because this stuff is made to like not stick to stuff. So once it dries, it'll always have that in there. And I started doing it recently, actually, because I knew what the stuff was that I was doing, but you know, I just kind of thought, God, this is kind of a little bit too much of an effort just to try to figure out when you could just label it. And so then that's it. So then once you have the label on, you know, now from here to forever, I'll know it's a King Drake large lobe. And I'll put King Drake S for the next one, the small lobe. And then I'll do another video on the open mouth, because I already have it in the freezer and everything ready. You know, a few different things different on that, but anyway, so then from here, once it dries from the bottom side, I'll cut with a pair of scissors. I'll undo the screws, pop this off, and then I'll just cut with a pair of scissors through the mold, basically where the bottom of the skin on the lower mandible, where you're going to glue the point, the triangular point. I'll cut to about right there, and then especially with the real head on the silicone, it's gonna pop out real easy. And then once you get to that, pull the head out. Especially on rare stuff like this, I'll keep it just in case I ever need it to mold for whatever, open mouth or maybe whatever. And then from there, I've already done a video on how to prep it with baby powder and do the hot glue and all that stuff. And so that's it. And like I said, I'll let this kind of harden a little bit. Now that I got the label in there, all the air bubbles, you know, detail and all the lobes and everything look good. And then once this hardens up, like I said, I'll add a thin little layer around wherever kind of as needed. And then like I said, then once it's dry, rip it off from the cardboard, make my little cut, wiggle, 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 pull it out, and that's it. And then it's ready to pour. You'll get probably, depending on the detail, I mean, especially this with a pretty, not a lot of sharp, you know, angles and stuff to get pulled out. It'll last quite a few, you know, pours if you're using baby powder real good. So anyway, that's how you mold a King Eider drake head. Bye guys.